Aging red wine is a large part of the winemaking process. Aging wine allows small amounts of oxygen into your wine, which allows your tannins, the rawness of your wine, really to soften and age and sort of get that creation that we find in the bottle at the end of the day. Oak barrels are a great way of aging wine because they allow small amounts of oxygen through the staves of the barrel without allowing any of the wine to leak out. The nice thing about an oak barrel, it's an artistic creation within itself. It comes from nature. They are created from oak trees which are grown in France, and it adds a great characteristic to especially red wine. There are different flavors depending on where the trees are grown, the way that the barrels put together, the grains of the barrels, as well as the toasting element that you have in the wine. So a lot of these flavors are introduced into the wine as well. You get a little bit of toastiness, nuttiness, and you can get sometimes a little bit of sweetness, and this really sort of builds as a great accompaniment to the red wine in the end of the day. At Waterford, we only use French oak barrels. The other region where you can get wine barrels is also from America, and newer regions come from Hungary, Austria. Waterford only uses French oak for a very particular reason. Our vineyards are grown in the southern hemisphere in South Africa. We have a lot of sunshine, a lot of warmth. So our wine, as a raw ingredient point of view, is really showcasing the more sweeter fruits. We have a lot of richness, a lot of glycerol in our wines. So what we need from our barrels is really a lot of structure. The French oak barrels or the French oak trees are grown in the coolest climate. So the trees grow extremely slowly, and they are only harvested when they're about 260 to 340 years of age. So it's a very slow growing tree, which means that the grains are extremely tight. So this adds a lot more tension into your wine, a little bit more of that oaky structure, as opposed to American oak or other oak barrels, which would add more sweetness, which would clash with our raw wine, which is already have a sweet, great fruit profile of wine. So we're looking for more structure, a little bit more tension in the wine, and this is why we use French oak barrels. What I've learned from aging red wine on Waterford using 11 different grape varietals is that we create 11 different wines which require different methods of aging. Aging largely affected by the amount of oxygen that is introduced into your wine. So the vessel in which your wine ages is extremely important. So for vessels that are slightly more, or wines that are slightly more sensitive, a little bit more elegant, maybe light in structure, where oak might be a bit overpowering, we look at vessels like porcelain, which also allows oxygen through the pores, but at a very small rate. And the beauty about porcelain is that it's not adding any oaky flavors, which oak does. So it's very neutral on flavor, it keeps that vibrancy, keeps the fruit profile very fresh, but still allows the wine to develop and age. Other vessels that we do use is concrete. This is mostly more for the Chenin Blanc vineyard that we have, that we deal with. A lot of oxygen moves through concrete. Chenin likes a lot of oxygen, especially during fermentation as well as aging. Because Chenin Blanc is already rich, it has a little bit of that honeycomb, sweet apricot, and it has a very low acidity, we need to be very careful with adding in oak tannins, because this could very easily quickly lead to a wine with a little bit of bitterness. Then leading to oak, which is the most important vessel for aging in Waterford cellar, we have different vessel sizes. So the smaller the oak vessel, the more intensity you're going to get from that oak. Whereas as we move to a larger vessel, 300 liters, or behind me a 2,400 liter vessel, the oak becomes a little bit more in the background, which is also driven more towards our Mediterranean varietals like Shiraz, Sangiovese, Mourvedre, which don't like to have a lot of oak influence on them. The other vessel that we also use quite a lot more in the primary stages of making wine is stainless steel. Not the greatest vessel for using for aging because it doesn't allow any oxygen in, but it does make it a very useful tool when creating very young, very fresh and fruit-forward styles of wine. Mostly used for Sauvignon Blanc on the property, but also a great vessel for utilizing during winemaking fermentations when we need to blend or evaluate wines. They are obviously the most practical to use because the volume is so much bigger. The largest vessel for oak, we're really looking at about 10 to 15,000 litres, which is not big enough to create a single blend.